1930s New York, a city in the clouds. The highest of the high live in the heights and uppers where everyone is spoiled, pampered, and living the life of luxury. Whereas the lowers house the destitute, and everyone is struggling just to make the next buck under the oppressive reign of tyrants. And powering it all is Aether, a resource used to power anti-gravitational technology which keeps their floating city up in the sky. Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm taking a look at Aether Iron, developed by Seismic Squirrel and Chaos Theory Games, releasing it at the end of March this year. It's a decopunk narrative RPG where you play as Gia Rendazzo, a smuggler down on her luck but soon becomes caught up in something big. I played about 4 hours of it and wanted to share my first impressions.
If a bird from the heights flew down on an air of mystery, he'd want to know why.
The narrative takes center stage here as one would expect, with a particular emphasis on the unique world the designers crafted. As mentioned, it takes place in 1930s New York, but obviously not the 1930s New York in our own timeline. Instead, there was a major discovery made of a resource named Aether that's used to power anti-gravitational technology. With that, they took to the skies, and it seems like they kind of ignore the ground level now. Anyway, as Gia Rendazzo, the grizzled smuggler takes on a job to escort Nellie, a young affluent scientist on the run. This gets Gia mixed up in a plot to try and silence Nellie because she discovers that Aether might not be all it's cracked up to be, and could have potentially huge ramifications for a society that has built itself completely around it. Gia becomes sort of a babysitter to Nellie, as the young scientist is quite naive to the actualities of many in the city. And admittedly, that did make me, and Gia for that matter, a bit annoyed with Nellie at times.
I just want to give him this scarf. It gets so cold in the winter.
Oh no, how terrible. But don't worry, we'll find him for you.
Damn it, I guess I'm in this now.
Although her ignorance made it really easy for the game to highlight the vast societal divide between the different levels of the city and the inhabitants therein. However, there are other characters that Gia meets along the way, all with their own moral ambiguous takes on the world. Some of them even join Gia in her adventure, although I can't directly comment on any of them since I didn't have anyone join my crew during my playtime for this video. Additionally, the world is pleasantly presented with a ton of well done artwork. Most of the characters all had multiple poses as well to flesh out the dialogue, which I liked a lot. Every background brought a lot of detail to the world to accentuate things like the dark undercity, or give a proper sense of scale to the place as a whole. I found it quite easy to imagine this world because of the great art. It also has to be said, but the voice acting is just amazing. Every single line you read is voiced in the game. All the characters are distinct, and even Gia's internal monologuing is 100% voiced. Each actor has put a lot of care into developing their lines, and it shows consistently throughout what I've played. Honestly, it surprised me that the whole game was voiced given time and resources that would have needed to be spent to do that. It was well worth it though, as that's easily the star of the show.
Anyway, listen to me prattle on. I get flustered when faced with such ravishing beauty, you see. For sisters, you don't look that much alike. Do people tell you that often?
Oh, he's loving this. Savoring every second like we're a pair of potato knish, fresh out of the oven. Which means, of course, he's about to bite.
As a narrative-focused game, most of what you'll be doing is reading/listening to the story playing out. Occasionally you'll need to make decisions, with many of them being determined by a dice roll, which felt very TTRPG to me, and that's not a bad thing. These rolls play directly into the stats, which can affect the outcome. Gia has 3 different branches of stats that make up things like how well she can smooth talk out of a situation, how perceptive she is, or how handy she might be when it comes to her car. These can be further supplemented with crew members who could fill out holes in your crew's builds. However, these skills also provide combat bonuses as well. So it always felt difficult for me to choose between a particular skill line that I wanted to improve for dialogue options, versus one that I wanted to improve for combat, which I think is a good thing. Luckily, if you choose poorly or you get someone who already has the skills you spec'd into, then you could use a particular item to re-spend your skill points, which is nice. With the dialogue options, I also appreciated how the outcomes had a little bit more than a simple success or failure. There was usually meaningful narrative payoff in the moment, which I liked. I don't really know how much of it affects the overall narrative, but the choices at the time felt impactful and had me staring at my screen at times, deciding whether or not I wanted to do one thing or another. Although on that end, yes, you can completely save scum if you want to, which I may or may not have done for some of those choices. Some decisions you make also accrue heat for Gia and her crew. As you drive through the city from destination to destination, you'll be met with random encounters. Some of these are just small bits of narrative, while others can span into full side quests. One such event is to be stopped by a checkpoint. These will check your car for contraband or hinder you in some way if your heat is too high. Additionally, if you're hot, then it might result in people treating you differently and potentially more enemies in a fight.
I just don't want to kill people anymore.
And that brings us to the last aspect of Aether Iron's gameplay: turn-based car fighting. I'll admit that it feels fairly simple, but fun. It doesn't seem like it's meant to be a deep system, but given the type of game that it is, that's perfectly fine. Fights take place on a stretch of road that usually have other environmental obstacles in the form of bystanders. Throughout a fight, other indicators will appear that are cautions to tell you of upcoming hazards, such as falling rubble or a lane ending. These things keep the fights feeling dynamic and makes players think strategically in how to spend their actions and action points. On the player's turn, they have a set number of actions based on the guns equipped on their car. Additionally, they have action points needed to fire those weapons and move. You could also ram a car at the expense of your own health, but it could be just what you need to push an enemy into one of those aforementioned road hazards. Outside of combat, you can equip your car with a variety of things like a better engine for more action points and different kinds of guns. I wouldn't expect anything on the level of something like Pacific Drive where you're swapping out every part of your car, but it was still cool to get new toys. Although you can modify your paint job a bit, which is nice. Overall, these other mechanics outside of the dialogue choices are nice additions that help supplement the narrative. They don't feel incredibly deep, but that's not a bad thing, so players can stay focused on Aether Iron's true strengths with its story, characters, and world building.
We did it, Gia! He's gone!
Before I get into my final thoughts, if you're enjoying the video or found it helpful, then please consider giving this video a like and subscribing for more video game coverage in the future in the form of reviews and first impressions. And if you're feeling extra generous, then you could tip me via YouTube Super Thanks or consider joining my YouTube membership. Every little bit goes a long way in helping improve the channel. Aether Iron runs for $24.99 USD, and I put about 4 hours into the game for the first impression. The game seems to have a total playtime of around 20 hours depending on how fast you go through it, and that's barring any future playthroughs. Although I read from several Steam reviews that the story was fairly linear regardless of your choices. That said, the story seems decent and the overall quality of the game makes it worth the purchase. The world really sells this for me, and I'm looking forward to finishing the game and hopefully seeing a sequel in the future. Oh, and if you're on the fence about this, then you could play the demo, which actually lets you carry over your progress to the full game if you decide to pull the trigger and pick it up. If you played the game, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't, then let me know if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other questions. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.